everybody, it's Charlie from the library and we're just going to have a quick think about journal articles. The main difference between journal articles and books is that a book is published, gets put on our shelves and just slowly gets more and more out of date. Journal publishing never stops, okay? In that way it's similar to magazine and newspaper publishing. So an issue of a journal will come out with some articles in, and then depends from journal to journal, but maybe the next month or the next couple of months, a new issue of that journal will come out with more articles in. Okay, so they never stop, which means journals are a really good way to find current information. New cases and new legal developments are going to be talked about in journal articles a long time, possibly years before they get talked about in books. Another significant difference between journal articles and books is that journal articles are a lot shorter. This is of course brilliant if you're trying to make the most of your time, because it will take you less time to read a journal article than it would to read a book from cover to cover. The other implication of that is that because they're shorter, journal articles often have a much narrower focus, okay, because they've got fewer words. So they might just talk about a single case, whereas it would be extremely rare to find a whole book written about a single case. Okay, so they're really up to date because they never stop publishing. They're often a lot more precise and focused in their scope. And the third thing to know about journal articles, and this is what sets them apart from a lot of other material that you'll find on the internet, is that they're very reliable. If you look at the author information, you'll see that most journal articles are written either by an academic or somebody who practices law. And a lot of legal journals go through what's called peer review. Okay? If you haven't come across the concept of peer review before, it means that when an author submits an article, a couple of anonymous reviewers in the same area of law, so the academic won't know who the reviewers are and the reviewers won't know who the author is. It's all anonymous. These reviewers, who are also experts, will effectively mark the paper. Okay, it's very similar to your coursework being marked. They'll look for any errors, any inconsistencies. They might make some suggestions. They might say, oh, you might want to read this if the author hasn't cited it. The author will then take on board those comments, resubmit the paper, and hopefully it will then be accepted and published. That means that by the time that we, the readers, and you, the readers, see the article, we know it's got that stamp of quality. It's been reviewed by experts in the same area of law, and that gives us more confidence in trusting it and using it in our work. Now, let's go back to that first point about the fact that journals never stop publishing. This is why when you look at a journal reference, often the information that comes after it might look a little bit confusing, and that's because of this continuous publication process. And often when we look at journal articles online, for example on Lexis Library or on Westlaw, we just look at that one article sort of in isolation, and we don't understand how it fits together with other articles, and that really doesn't help us understand the referencing. So, to understand how journals work, I brought along this, which my dad bought me when I was a kid. So think about this large Russian doll as being a volume, okay? So typically every year there'll be a different volume of each journal, and the volume number will just go up by one every year. So it just depends how long the journal has been around for as to how high the number is, okay? So this is a volume. Every volume contains multiple issues, okay? So an issue might come out every month or every couple of months. And then every issue is made up of journal articles, which will obviously cover a number of pages. Okay, so our small articles form part of our issue, and multiple issues go inside the big doll, which is the volume. Okay, slightly silly analogy, but it might help you understand how these small things form up into part of a big thing. There's a separate video I've made about how to reference journal articles, which helps you turn my silly Russian doll analogy into an actual useful footnote. So I'll pop the link below this one in the comments, so do have a look at that video. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you going into a module reading list and clicking through to a journal article, and then we'll look at some of the most useful parts of that journal article. Starting from your module reading list is the best way to find journal articles that your module leader recommends, but of course you're more than welcome and in fact encouraged to go and find your own journal articles on topics, and I've stuck some information below the video about ways that you can go and do that. I'm on the library homepage. I'll pop a link to it below the video, and I'm using the big library search box. I've picked the reading list tab, and then in the search box I've popped in the module number of the module I'm interested in. It also works if you put in the module name. Press search and then pick the reading list from the list of results. And it'll take you to an online reading list that looks something like this. A handy tip is if you're only interested in seeing the journal articles that your module leader has recommended and nothing else, you can click on this button Type at the top and select Articles, and then it will filter out everything else and just show you journal articles. Also, to save you having to scroll down endlessly, you can use the table of contents to jump to a particular week or a particular topic. So, let's assume I'm preparing for my seminar on sources of international law, and I can see this article here. I know it's an article because it's got this sort of stylized picture of a PDF with some pictures, and it's also labeled article. And I can see that my module leader has labeled it essential. So I know it's particularly important that I read this ahead of the seminar. So to get to it, all I need to do is click on the View Online button. It's as simple as that. You might be prompted for your Brooks student number and password, and then it will take you straight to that journal article. This happens to be a journal article that's on Lexis Library, but it could be in one of a number of different places. Do you remember me saying that one of the best things about journal articles is that they tend to be written by reliable experts that know what they're talking about? It actually tells us underneath the names of the three authors their professional roles. So that gives me a bit of confidence that they know what they're talking about. Also, when it comes to referencing this article, it tells me usually at the top and also down the side on Lexis Library, things like the name of the journal, the year, the volume number, and 733, which is the start page. And these are all bits of information that I need when I write an OSCOLA reference to this journal article. Typically, you'll get what's called an abstract at the top of a journal article. Always read this first. This is effectively a summary of the article, and it helps you understand whether it's worthwhile carrying on with the article. Although we know this one's labelled essential by our module leader, so I think we're going to have to read it. You then scroll down and you'll get the full text of the journal article. Often, I recommend looking above or to the side. Often you'll also be able to download the article as a PDF, which means you can then read it offline if you need to. A final really important thing to look out for in a journal article, and something that often gets overlooked, is the footnotes and the references at the end if there are any. This article has heaps and heaps of footnotes, and lots of them have links in. Okay, so this is one nice way of finding other resources. You go to one thing that your module leader has recommended and then use their references to find other things. Okay, so you're using this as a springboard to find other things. I'm not going to go into it now, but have a look below this video for some resources that will show you how to move beyond your reading list and how to find other journal articles.